Welcome back to another episode of Coffee and Books with Michaela. Today I am doing a review over a book called Heaven, West Virginia by Ravi Texaziria. I think I pronounced that wrong, and I'm so sorry if I did. But here it is. Here's what it looks like. I received an e-arc from NetGalley for a review. And so before I get into the video or anything, I would like to say thank you to NetGalley. Thank you to Oni Press, I think is what it's called. Hold on. Yes, Oni Press. And thank you to the author for letting me review the book and giving me an e-arc of it. So without further ado, let's get into the video. So I am going to read the description that they give you for the book, and then I'm going to give my review of how I read it, and then I'm going to talk about things I liked and what things I didn't like, and then what I rated it and why I rated it that. So the description for the book is: Lamont's father was not a good man, and now Lamont's father is dead. When Lamont arrives in the tiny Appalachian town of Heaven, West Virginia, its lush landscape feels stubbornly at odds with the rolling anxiety that's come to define his inner life. Living there and learning the art of foraging and tea making from his kind, stoic aunt, Latoya, should be idyllic, even a paradise. But in the shadow of Heaven's woods, Lamont sees a dark, hulking figure, long, glimmering teeth and piercing red eyes. No one else seems to see this beast, not his aunt, and not the handsome cowboy Coyote, whose gentle voice evokes the comforting electric aroma of Latoya's brews, escaping into raucously hungry pursuit feels impossible, and Lamont will have to face more than the darkness of the woods to do so. So that is their description that they give. And so that happens, and he goes to the chicken coop, and he sees like glowing eyes in the chicken coop underneath it. And he freaks out and he screams, and his aunt comes and she's like, "There's nothing here." And then after that, it just shows his aunt teaching him about how to forage for tea, and then tea itself, how to make it. And he goes, "Why would anyone want to do this when you can just go buy it?" And she's like, "Because I enjoy it." And so they show she shows him how to make it, and he helps make the tea. And then there's another part where he goes to the store and he sees Coyote again, and he's like, "Oh, it's you." And Coyote will go "Oh, it's me," and it's really awkward. And then after that, it shows another scene of him at home and other scenes of him foraging, and again he's seeing the wolves everywhere, and he goes off into a tangent about how everything in the forest is trying to kill you. And then there's a storm, and they have to find candles, but before they go look for candles, Coyote comes over and he brings candles. And even before this, actually, let me backpedal a little bit. There was at one of these times throughout all this tea making and foraging where he saw the wolves, and he ran to Coyote's place because Coyote's goat had become wolves and had chased him, and he was freaking out, and Coyote gave him a hug and asked him if he was okay. And then once they realized that the wolves weren't actually wolves, Coyote kind of tried to comfort him and tell him that it was okay, because everyone goes a little mad in the woods, and then they just start making out, which I'm like, okay, cool, I guess. And then after that, it shows another scene of him back at home, and this is before like the storm happened. And then the storm happens, and Coyote brings candles, and then Lamont's aunt, Latoya, I believe, says, oh, you can't go home in this, and so she tells him he's just gonna have to bunk with Lamont. And like I said, throughout this book, there's been wolves falling at him. Goats have been wolves. Coyotes, horse have been a wolf at a few points. And so they're beginning to bunk together, really just fall in bed together and, go to town. And in the midst of this, Lamont, for like a little bit, turns into a wolf himself and then stops. And afterwards, Lamont eventually admits that he's gay, and Lamont's like, yeah. I mean, not Lamont, Coyote is like, yeah. And Lamont's like, well, I've never said that before. And he goes, well, how does it feel? And he's like, I don't know. And then they just kind of hug. And throughout this book series, throughout the series of this book, or I guess series isn't the right word, but like each scene, that'd be a better word, they show like little background things about Lamont and his like life from the past before his father died, and there's very much heavy religious talk, and most of it's extremely homophobic. So that is a warning too, if that's going to be a trigger. It might not be the best book for you to read. And then after that whole scene, he goes home, and then we get another scene of Lamont looking for his aunt, and she actually died. And it goes to her funeral, and which he kind of has a, I think it's a panic attack. And he runs to his father's grave, and the wolves are chasing him at this point to his father's grave too. And the wolves are saying, you're just like me, you can't outrun me, you're going to be me, and like a whole bunch of stuff like that. And he's like, no, I am not you, I'm a different person, and just denying that he's not anything like him or him, and how he refuses to be. And then he eventually pushes like one of the wolves against the headstone that has a cross on it, and it like gets the wolf, like he does this and yells like, I'm not you, and just denying it, and saying that that he's never going to be him and stuff like that, and that he's his own person, and that he can't hurt him anymore, and just like pushes the wolf, and the wolves, after that one wolf, they all just disappear. And then the scene goes to him going back to his home, or actually his aunt's home, and Coyote is there, and Coyote's like, are you okay? And he's like, yeah. And then they hug, and at the end is artwork that the author Ravi did about the characters and about some of the scenes, I believe. And also something else I forgot to mention, throughout this whole book, there have been different tea recipes, which I think is really cool. There's so many. There's like, I believe one is blueberry one, there's a ginger one, there's like, I think one that has like cherries in it or something like that. And then there's some other ones, I forget what all of them are, but like I would really like to try making them one day. So it's really cool that the recipes are there, and that is one thing I like about that. So moving on, because that's my little blurb about the book. Things I liked was the artwork. I liked the artwork. It did a good job of telling the story, or the story that we got at least. And the artwork was fantastic too, and the color scheme too, sometimes it made you like a little like creeped out or on edge, especially when the wolves were in panel. And again, I liked the tea recipes throughout the whole book. That was really nice. That was a really nice touch. And I like the artwork at the end of the book, showing different things that the author didn't include in the book. With that being said, there are some complaints I have, or things I didn't like. So things I didn't like is, I feel like we missed a lot. I feel like there were conversations and scenes that happened within the pages that we did not see or read. And like, it didn't flow smoothly. Like, it felt very choppy. Like, you're reading this, and then all of a sudden you're reading this. And there were points in the book where I was like kind of confused, and I would flip through, or swipe through actually, to make sure I hadn't missed any pages, and I hadn't, because it was like one moment you're here, the next moment you're here, especially when the flashbacks started happening throughout the book, because it was like there was no warning for them, you know? So it felt like, I don't know, it felt like you were being like thrown to one scene and thrown to another one and then thrown to another one. There was no like real connection between those. And it was really, really fast too, which it's a shorter book, so it's going to be fast, but like it felt extremely fast, especially the romance between Coyote and the main character, Lamont. And also that's another complaint too, is you can't really feel like the romance, since he's supposed to be like a romantic partner, and you don't really feel that or get a sense of that. He's supposed to be a love interest. Yeah, I didn't feel that at all. In fact, the characters kind of felt hollow, like they didn't have any form of emotion. The only emotion I felt was him being annoyed in the beginning of the book about people telling him that his father was a good man. I don't like feel any emotion from any of the characters past that. And like when he's talking with his aunt, I don't feel any emotion. When he's talking with Coyote, I feel no emotion. It's kind of hard to connect with the characters because of that. Yeah. I feel like if the book was longer and the scenes were more drawn out, it would have like flowed smoother and been easier to understand. So yeah, those are things I did not like about the book. And to just talk about the book in general, I feel like to talk about something that I liked too, or not really liked, but my interpretation maybe of the wolves, because we see the wolves, how when he slams it against the headstone and finally denies, I'm not this, is I think the wolves were guilt and grief for his father dying, grief probably for his aunt dying, and I'm gonna even take a step further and say guilt, because remember when I said that there was flashbacks and his father was speaking in very homophobic, anti-gay stuff, and saying that, you know, it was the sin and all of that. I think when he finally accepted himself as being gay and actually said it out loud, that he kind of maybe felt guilty about it. And that's how I'm getting from these wolves. I feel like the wolves are guilt from that. Because if you were raised, that's one way I connect. Because if you were raised in like a religious family like that, it is kind of like a guilt and grief from that. And then finally admitting it. And I think that's where part of the wolves come from. And when he finally admits to himself about his sexuality, and when he goes to his father's grave and confronts his grief and his father's death and comes to terms with both of those things, is when the wolves finally go away. And I think there's just something so poetic about that. So yeah. Moving on to how I rated it. I rated it a 3 out of 5 stars. I was in between going like a 2.5 to a 3 star, but you can't really do like a 0.5 within your ratings on a lot of places, so I went ahead and gave it a 3, just for the reasons that I've mentioned that I did not like. I feel like those were like big things. From example, like it being very choppy, the book being very choppy and fast paced, like really fast paced, along with, like I said, not really connecting with the characters that much because their actions were kind of hollow. Well, not their actions, but like how they spoke to each other was like hollow, like no feeling whatsoever. And for those reasons, that's why I rated it that. Other reasons why I rated it, I guess that are positive, are the fact I like the tea recipes throughout the whole book, and I like the artwork. Those are the reasons why the rating was a 3 out of 5 stars. So I hope you enjoyed my video and my review. And if you like the book, if you've reviewed it yourself, or if you read it when it comes out, if you like it or you don't like it, or if you're kind of like middle ground about liking it and not liking it for different reasons like me. I did like it, but at the same time, I was kind of disappointed, I guess. So it wasn't that I didn't like it, but maybe not like one of my favorites, if that makes sense. Anyways, back on topic. Whether you like it or not, tell me down below in the comments. If you plan to read it, tell me if you plan to read it or not. But I do recommend you reading it, because even if I did rate it a 3 out of 5 stars and found some problem with it, I also thought it was a good story too. And that it talks about grief and accepting your grief and moving on. Anyways, just comment down below what you think, and give me a like or subscribe if you liked my videos and if you want to see more. Bye!